"Mom, we need to talk about the house." My son Isaiah said those words to me 4 weeks after we buried his father. 4 weeks after I'd stood at Raymond's grave, trying to understand how 36 years of marriage could end with a heart attack at 63 years old. 4 weeks after my world had collapsed into a silence so deep I could hear my own heartbeat echoing through rooms that used to be filled with his voice. I looked up from the kitchen table where I'd been sitting with cold coffee and unopened mail. Bills, mostly. Medical bills that kept arriving like clockwork, each one a reminder of Raymond's final 6 months, the cancer treatment that hadn't worked, the experimental therapy that had cost everything we'd saved, the hospital stays that had eaten through our insurance maximum and kept going. Isaiah stood in the doorway with Nia behind him. My daughter-in-law wore her work clothes, the kind of crisp blazer and tailored pants that made her look competent and serious. Isaiah had his father's height but not his ease. He looked uncomfortable, like he'd been rehearsing this conversation. "Can't it wait?" I asked, though I knew from his expression that it couldn't. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Because what happened next taught me that sometimes the people who love you can hurt you without meaning to. That grief makes us all strangers to each other. And that assumptions about who owns what can destroy a family faster than any intentional cruelty. I'm Sheila Patton, 61 years old, and I'd just been asked to leave the only home I'd known for 28 years. But let me back up so you understand how I got here. How a woman who'd worked 33 years as a school cafeteria manager, who'd raised a good son and built a stable life, ended up sitting in a cheap motel, wondering if her own child had betrayed her. I met Raymond Patton in 1988. I was 25, working my first year at Madison High School's cafeteria. He was 26, a new English teacher with worn shoes and a smile that made me forget I was supposed to be serving lunch. He'd come through my line every day, always ordering the same thing, always making some terrible joke about the mystery meat. It took him 3 months to ask me out. Another 6 months before he told me he loved me. We got married in 1,989 inches, a small ceremony at Bethel AME Church with 40 people and a cake I made myself because we couldn't afford a bakery. Raymond's mother had died the year before, leaving him her house in West Baltimore. A narrow row house on a tree-lined street, 3 bedrooms, 1,100 square feet. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. Or his, technically. The deed was in Raymond's name because that's how his mother had left it. I never questioned it, never thought about it. We were married. What was his was mine. What was mine was his. That's how I understood marriage to work. I worked at Madison High for 33 years, started as a cafeteria worker making $8.25 an hour, worked my way up to manager, retired last year making $43,000 annually with a small pension. Raymond taught English at the same school for 31 years. Made decent money for a teacher, about $72,000 by the end, with a better pension than mine. We weren't rich, but we were stable. We paid our mortgage, maintained the house, took 1 vacation a year to visit my sister in Atlanta. We put Isaiah through community college and helped with his wedding 4 years ago. We were doing okay. Then Raymond started feeling tired. That was 18 months ago. Just tired, he said. Getting old, he said. But the tired turned into weight loss. Weight loss turned into doctor visits. Doctor visits turned into tests. Tests turned into the word that changes everything. Cancer. Stage 3, pancreatic cancer. The kind that kills 95% of people within 5 years. The kind that had probably been growing silently while Raymond graded papers and made his terrible jokes and kissed me goodnight like we had forever. We fought it. God, we fought it. Chemotherapy that made him so sick he couldn't eat the food I'd spent 33 years serving to other people's children. Radiation that burned his skin. An experimental trial in D.C. that cost $40,000 out of pocket because insurance called it not medically necessary. We emptied our savings. All $38,000 we'd built up over 36 years. We borrowed $15,000 from Isaiah, who'd insisted despite Nia's obvious discomfort. We maxed out 3 credit cards. We took a second mortgage on the house. And Raymond died anyway. February 14th, 2025, Valentine's Day. The cruelty of that timing wasn't lost on me. The funeral was beautiful. Everyone said so. The church was full. His former students came, some of them in their 42nd now with children of their own, telling me how Mr. Patton had changed their lives. His colleagues cried. The principal gave a speech about dedication and service. But all I could think about was the silence waiting for me at home, the empty chair at the kitchen table, the side of the bed that would stay cold, the voice I'd never hear again. Isaiah and Nia had been helpful during those first weeks. Too helpful, maybe. Nia organized the funeral, handled the flowers, managed the reception. Isaiah dealt with the bank, the insurance companies, the endless paperwork that comes with death. I was grateful. I was drowning in grief and they were throwing me lifelines. But somewhere in those first 4 weeks, something shifted. Isaiah started coming by more often. Nia would be there when I got home from running errands, organizing closets, sorting through Raymond's clothes. They were always together, always whispering, always stopping conversation when I entered a room. I told myself they were being considerate, handling details so I could grieve. I didn't see what was really happening until it was too late. That morning, 4 weeks after Raymond's funeral, Isaiah and Nia arrived at 10 a.m. I was still in my robe. I'd stopped getting dressed some days. What was the point? Raymond wasn't there to see me. Nobody was there to see me. "Mom, we need to talk about the house," Isaiah said, and my world started crumbling for the second time in a month. I offered them coffee, but Nia shook her head. Isaiah sat on the couch that Raymond and I had bought 15 years ago from a thrift store, the one with the worn armrest where Raymond used to rest his elbow while reading. Nia sat beside him, her posture perfect, her expression sympathetic but firm. "Mom, we've been going through Dad's finances," Isaiah began, "trying to get everything organized for you. I appreciate that, baby. I know I should be handling it myself, but I just can't seem to focus." "That's understandable. Grief is exhausting." Nia's voice was gentle, practiced. She worked in HR at a healthcare company. She knew how to deliver difficult news with compassion. "That's why we wanted to take some of the burden off your shoulders." Isaiah pulled out a folder, the kind with metal clasps, full of papers. "Mom, Dad's medical bills. They're more than we thought." I'd been avoiding those envelopes. The ones that kept arriving with the hospital logo, with amounts that made my hands shake. "How much?" $85,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. I'd known it was bad, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real in a way I'd been avoiding. "The insurance covered what they could," Isaiah continued. "But Dad's treatment went beyond their limits. The experimental therapy, the extended hospital stays, the home care in his final weeks. It all added up. We can't pay that." My voice sounded small, defeated. "I have my pension, but it's only $1,800 a month. And I have to eat, pay utilities, keep the house maintained." Isaiah and Nia exchanged a glance. The kind of glance that told me they'd already discussed this, already made decisions, already planned this conversation down to every word. "That's what we need to talk about," Nia said. "The house." "What about it?" "Mom, you can't afford to stay here." Isaiah leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his face earnest. "The property taxes alone are $3,200 a year. Then there's insurance, utilities, maintenance. This house is 90 years old. Things break constantly." "I know that. Your father and I have been maintaining it for 28 years. But Dad had income. His teacher's pension was $3,400 a month, Combined with yours, you two were bringing in over $60,000 a year. Now you're down to less than $22,000. The math was brutal and accurate. I hadn't let myself think about it clearly until now. And there's the second mortgage, Nia added quietly. The $47,000 you borrowed against the house for Raymond's treatment. The monthly payment is $580. I'd forgotten about that, or tried to forget. We'd signed those papers in a hospital waiting room, desperate for any chance to save Raymond's life. I'd barely read the terms. I can't make that payment, I said, not on my pension. We know. Isaiah's voice was thick with something that sounded like guilt. Mom, that's why we think the best option is to sell the house. Sell the house. The words hung in the air like smoke. This was your father's house, his mother's house before that. It's been in the Patton family since 1967. I know, believe me, I know how hard this is. But Mom, you're 61 years old. This house is too big for one person, too expensive, too much maintenance for you to handle alone. I can handle it. Can you? Nia's voice was still gentle, but there was an edge now. The roof needs replacing. The basement floods every spring. The furnace is 20 years old. When those things break, and they will break, where's the money going to come from? I had no answer. Because she was right. The house was old, and I was alone, and I had no savings left. We've been looking at numbers, Isaiah said, pulling out more papers. The house could sell for about $180,000. After paying off the second mortgage, settling Dad's medical bills, and covering closing costs, you'd have maybe $35,000 left over. $35,000 to start over. It's enough for a security deposit and first month's rent on a nice apartment, something smaller, more manageable, ground floor, no stairs, closer to shopping, public transportation. You wouldn't have to worry about maintenance or property taxes or any of it. They'd thought of everything, planned it all out. My son and his wife, sitting in my living room, explaining why I needed to leave my home. Where would I go? I asked, hating how weak my voice sounded. We found a few places. Nia pulled out her phone, swiped through photos. This one is in Catonsville, near the library. 1 bedroom, $950 a month. Very clean, good neighborhood. She showed me pictures of beige walls and laminate floors and windows that looked out at parking lots. Generic apartments where people went when they had nowhere else to go. I don't want to live in an apartment. Mom, I know this is hard. Isaiah reached for my hand. But you have to be realistic. Dad's gone. The medical bills are real. The house is too much. We're trying to help you. Help me? Something hot flared in my chest. By taking away my home? By keeping you from financial ruin. Nia's voice was sharper now. Sheila, if you can't make the second mortgage payments, the bank will foreclose. You'll lose the house anyway, and you'll lose it with nothing to show for it. No money for a new start. No options. She's right, Mom. We're trying to save what we can while there's still something to save. I looked around the living room. At the walls Raymond had painted 3 years ago, the color I'd chosen because it reminded me of sunrise. At the bookshelf he'd built, slightly crooked but sturdy, filled with novels he'd taught and loved. At the window where we used to watch thunderstorms together, him explaining the science while I just enjoyed the sound of rain. When would I have to leave? We've already contacted a realtor, Isaiah said. She thinks we could list it next week. With the market the way it is, it could sell within a month. A month. They were giving me a month to pack up 28 years of life. Did your father know about this? Before he died, did he talk to you about selling the house? Isaiah hesitated. Just for a second, but I saw it. He talked about wanting to make sure you'd be taken care of. That you wouldn't struggle. That wasn't an answer to my question. The house was in Dad's name, Nia said, as if reading my thoughts. It came from his mother. Legally, it goes through his estate. We need to settle his debts before distributing any remaining assets. I'm his wife. Doesn't that mean anything? Of course it does. That's why we want to make sure you get something out of this. That $35,000 is yours, Mom. We're not trying to take anything from you. But they were taking everything. They just didn't understand that the house wasn't about money. It was about Raymond's voice in the kitchen, his presence in every room. The life we'd built together, board by board, year by year. I need time to think about this. Mom, there isn't much time. The second mortgage payment is due in 2 weeks. If you miss it, the late fees start adding up. The bank could start foreclosure proceedings. They had me cornered. No savings, no income beyond my small pension, no way to make the payments, and medical bills that would follow me whether I stayed or left. Okay, I heard myself say. Okay. Isaiah exhaled, relief visible on his face. Nia squeezed his hand. They thought they'd saved me. They thought this was kindness. I thought I'd just agreed to give up everything that mattered. The realtor came 3 days later. Her name was Donna Mitchell, mid-42s, wearing a blazer the color of money and carrying a tablet like a weapon. She walked through my house with Isaiah and Nia, taking photos, making notes, pointing out flaws I'd never noticed. The kitchen is dated, she said, running her finger along the countertop. But that's actually good. Buyers like to imagine their own renovations. The kitchen where I'd made 28 years of meals. Where Raymond and I had our coffee every morning, where he'd proposed to me after we'd been dating for 2 years, getting down on one knee right by the refrigerator because he couldn't wait another minute. Dated. The bathroom needs work. Donna continued upstairs. That tile is original to the house. Buyers will see that as a project. The bathroom where Raymond had shaved every morning, where I'd held his head while chemo made him sick, where I'd helped him shower when he became too weak to stand alone. A project. But the bones are good, she concluded, back in the living room. I think we can list at $185,000. Maybe get $180,000 after negotiation. She said it like it was generous, like $180,000 was enough compensation for being erased from my own life. When can we list it? Nia asked. She'd taken the lead on everything. Isaiah mostly stood silent, looking guilty but not guilty enough to stop this. I'll have the paperwork ready by Monday. We can do a showing schedule that works around Sheila's need for privacy. My need for privacy. Like I was the inconvenience in my own home. Actually, Isaiah said, and I heard hesitation in his voice. We were thinking Mom might want to stay with us during the showing period. It's easier for buyers when the house is empty. They can envision their own lives there. Stay with you? Just temporarily, until the house sells. Then you can move into your new apartment. The apartment they'd already picked out. The 1-bedroom in Catonsville with the beige walls and the view of nothing. Your house is too small, I said. Isaiah and Nia lived in a 2-bedroom condo in Towson. You don't have space for me. We'll make it work, Nia said, but her voice lacked conviction. It's just for a few weeks. Or I could go to a hotel. I didn't say it out loud, but the thought was there. Get out of everyone's way. Stop being the burden that needed managing. That night, after they'd all left, I sat in the house alone. Really alone for the first time since the funeral. Isaiah and Nia had been coming by so often, organizing so much, that I hadn't had space to just exist in my grief. Now I had space, and it was suffocating. I walked through each room, touching things. Raymond's bookshelf, the dent in the wall from when we'd moved the couch, the loose floorboard in the bedroom that creaked when you stepped on it, the water stain on the ceiling from when the roof leaked 5 years ago and we'd patched it ourselves because we couldn't afford a contractor. Every flaw, every imperfection, every sign of age and wear had a story, had our life embedded in it. And I was supposed to let strangers buy those stories for $180,000. I found myself in Raymond's study. I'd been avoiding this room, Isaiah had already packed up most of Raymond's clothes, donated them to Goodwill before I could object, but his study remained untouched. His books, his papers, his desk where he'd graded essays and planned lessons and written me love notes when we were first married. The desk was covered in mail. I'd been having it forwarded here, unable to face going through it. Bills mostly. More medical bills. A notice from the bank about the second mortgage. A statement from Raymond's pension showing his final payment had been deposited 3 days before he died. And underneath all of it, a large envelope from Chesapeake Title and Trust Company. I picked it up. It was addressed to both of us, Mr. and Mrs. Raymond Patton, dated from 6 months ago, September 2024, right when Raymond was starting treatment. Inside was a deed, the house deed. I'd never seen it before, never thought to look for it. Raymond had handled all the paperwork for the house. I just lived in it, cleaned it, made it a home while he dealt with property taxes and insurance and all the official documents that proved we owned it. But this deed looked different from what I'd expected. It wasn't just Raymond's name at the top. Raymond Patton and Sheila Patton, joint tenants with right of survivorship. I read it 3 times. Joint tenants with right of survivorship. I didn't know what that meant legally, but I understood the basic words. Both our names. Not just Raymond's, both of us. When had this changed? The house had been Raymond's when we married, from his mother. Everyone knew that. I'd never questioned it, never asked to be added to the deed. It was his family home, and I was grateful to live in it. But this document said otherwise. My hands were shaking. I pulled out my phone, searched for the term, joint tenancy with right of survivorship. The results made me sit down hard in Raymond's desk chair. It meant that when one owner died, the other automatically inherited full ownership. No probate, no estate settlement, no waiting for lawyers to divide assets. The house was mine, had been mine the moment Raymond died. I read article after article, making sure I understood. In Maryland, joint tenancy meant automatic transfer. The house didn't go through Raymond's estate at all. It was outside of probate, outside of his debts, which meant Isaiah and Nia were wrong. The house didn't need to be sold to settle Raymond's bills. The house was mine, free and clear of his estate, and I could keep it. Or I could sell it. That was my choice to make, not theirs. I sat in that study for 2 hours, holding that deed, trying to understand when and why Raymond had added my name. The document was dated September 15th, 2024, right after his diagnosis. Right when he'd started getting his affairs in order. He'd protected me. Even dying, even in pain, even knowing he was leaving me, Raymond had made sure I'd have the house, had made sure no one could take it from me. And I'd almost let it go without knowing. The next morning, I called a lawyer, found one through the Maryland Bar Association's referral service. Her name was Patricia Morrison, and she could see me that afternoon. Her office was in Towson, a small suite in a professional building. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense handshake. "Tell me what's happening, Mrs. Patton." I told her everything. Raymond's death, the medical bills, Isaiah and Nia's insistence that the house be sold, the realtor who'd already taken photos, and then I showed her the deed. Patricia studied it carefully, pulled up something on her computer, made notes on a legal pad. "Mrs. Patton, this is very clear. You own this house outright. The joint tenancy means it transferred to you automatically when your husband died. It's not part of his estate. So the medical bills? Those are estate debts. They have to be paid from your husband's estate assets, his pension accounts, his personal property, anything solely in his name, but not from jointly owned property. Not from this house. My son thinks the house has to be sold. Your son is mistaken. Now, you could choose to sell it to help settle your husband's debts. That's your decision. But legally, you're not required to. The house is yours." I felt dizzy. Relief and anger mixing together in equal measure. Why didn't anyone tell me this? Did your son consult an estate attorney? I don't know. He and his wife have been handling everything. They said they were helping me. Patricia's expression suggested she'd seen this before. Sometimes family members make assumptions about estate law without actually understanding it. Sometimes they mean well. Sometimes they don't. What do I do now? That depends. What do you want to do? It was the first time in 4 weeks anyone had asked me what I wanted. Not what was practical, not what made financial sense. What I wanted. I want to stay in my house. Then you stay in your house. I'll draft a letter to your son explaining the legal situation. I'll also contact the realtor and inform her that the listing needs to be canceled. What about the medical bills? I can't pay $85,000. The estate will need to settle what it can from your husband's assets. If there aren't enough assets, the creditors write off the rest. They can't come after you for his medical debts. Maryland law protects surviving spouses from most estate debts. Protection I didn't know I had. Rights I'd almost given up because no one had explained them to me. I drove home from Patricia's office in a daze. The house was mine, had been mine all along. Raymond had made sure of it, had added my name to the deed 6 months ago while I was focused on doctor appointments and treatment schedules and praying for miracles. He'd known he was dying. Even when we were still hoping, still fighting, he'd known. And he'd protected me in the only way he could. But driving through Baltimore's streets, past the neighborhoods where I'd lived my entire adult life, I felt anger rising alongside the relief. Isaiah had been so certain, so insistent. Had he even checked? Had he consulted a lawyer? Or had he just assumed he knew what needed to happen? And Nia, all her talk about being realistic, about keeping me from financial ruin. Had she researched estate law? Or had she just seen an opportunity to solve what she perceived as a problem? I pulled into my driveway, sat in the car for a long moment. The house looked the same as it had that morning, the porch where Raymond used to sit with his coffee. The window boxes I'd planted with petunias every spring. The front door he'd painted blue because I said it reminded me of sky. Mine. It was mine. I went inside, walked straight to the kitchen, and called Isaiah. Hey, Mom. Everything okay? I need you and Nia to come over. Tonight. Is something wrong? We need to talk. About the house. Mom, we've already been through this. I know it's hard, but just come over. 6 o'clock. Both of you. I hung up before he could argue. They arrived at 6:15. Nia looked annoyed at being pulled away from whatever they'd had planned. Isaiah looked worried, guilty, like he knew something had shifted but couldn't identify what. I'd made coffee, but none of us touched it. We sat in the living room, the same positions as a week ago when they'd told me I needed to leave. I met with a lawyer today, I said. Isaiah's face went pale. Mom, you didn't need to do that. We're handling everything. You're handling it wrong. Nia stiffened. What's that supposed to mean? I pulled out the deed, placed it on the coffee table between us. This is the deed to the house. Did you ever look at it? Dad's house came from his mother, Isaiah said. We know the history. Look at the names. He picked up the document, scanned it. I watched his expression change as he registered what he was seeing. This says both your names. Joint tenancy with right of survivorship. Your father added my name 6 months ago, right after his diagnosis. I don't understand. But Isaiah's voice suggested he was starting to. It means the house automatically became mine when Raymond died. It's not part of his estate. It doesn't need to be sold to pay his medical bills. Nia leaned forward, reading the deed over Isaiah's shoulder. That can't be right. Estate debts have to be settled. Estate debts are settled from estate assets. This house isn't an estate asset. It transferred to me automatically. Outside of probate. But the medical bills are not my responsibility. Maryland law protects surviving spouses from most estate debts. The bills get paid from whatever assets were solely in Raymond's name, his pension accounts, his personal property. If there's not enough to cover everything, the creditors write off the rest. The silence was thick. Isaiah set down the deed like it had burned him. "You're saying we were wrong." "You were wrong. The house is mine. I don't have to sell it. I don't have to move. The realtor needs to be canceled. This was all a mistake." "A mistake?" Nia's voice was sharp now. "We spent 2 weeks researching options for you. Finding apartments. Meeting with realtors. Trying to help you avoid foreclosure. Help I didn't need, because you made assumptions without checking the actual law. We were trying to protect you." "From what?" "From my own home?" Isaiah put his head in his hands. "Mom, I'm sorry. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought Dad's house had to go through estate settlement. I didn't know he'd changed the deed." "Did you ask? Did you look at any legal documents before deciding I needed to leave?" He didn't answer, which was answer enough. "We were trying to spare you," Nia said. "Making these decisions is exhausting. We thought if we handled everything, you could just grieve. You thought if you handled everything, I wouldn't question your decisions. That's not fair, isn't it? You had a realtor here taking photos. You'd picked out an apartment. You were managing my life without asking what I wanted. Because you weren't capable of making these decisions," Nia snapped. "You've been walking around in a fog for a month. Someone had to step up." "Someone had to take over, you mean?" Isaiah looked up, his eyes red. "Mom, that's not what this was. I love you. I was trying to help. Then why does it feel like you were trying to get rid of me?" The question hung in the air. Isaiah flinched like I'd struck him. "That's not what I wanted. I swear that's not what I wanted. But it's what was happening. You were putting me in an apartment an hour away. You were selling the house your father made sure I'd keep. You were making decisions about my life like I didn't have a say. Because you weren't saying anything." Nia stood up, agitated. "You just sat there agreeing to everything. How are we supposed to know you didn't want this? You could have asked. You could have slowed down. You could have checked the actual law before planning to sell my house. We thought we were helping." Nia's voice cracked. "We thought we were doing the right thing." "For who? For me? Or for yourselves?" Nia's face flushed red. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm wondering who really benefits from selling this house. Who gets that $35,000 you said would be left over after settling the bills?" "You would get it," Isaiah said quickly. "We told you that. It's your money." "Is it? Or would there be expectations? Would I be helping you pay off the $15,000 you loaned us for Raymond's treatment? Would I be contributing to your lives because you'd helped me so much?" Isaiah looked stricken. "Mom, we never asked for that money back. We told Dad it was a gift. But it's been mentioned 3 times in the past month. How much it cost you. How tight things have been since then." Nia crossed her arms. "Because it has been tight. We borrowed against our retirement to help with Raymond's treatment. We're still recovering from that financially. And selling my house would help you recover faster. That's not why we suggested it. Isn't it? Even a little bit? You're $15,000 in debt because of us. The house sells. I get $35,000, and maybe I'd feel obligated to give you half. Maybe more." "We never said that," Isaiah insisted. "Never. You didn't have to say it. It was there in every conversation. How much you'd sacrificed. How hard this has been on you. How you were trying to help me even though it was costing you so much." Isaiah stood up, pacing. "I can't believe you're accusing us of trying to steal from you. This is my father we're talking about. Your husband. We were trying to honor his memory by making sure you were taken care of. By taking away the one thing he made sure I'd keep? We didn't know. How many times do I have to say that? We didn't know he'd changed the deed. But you didn't check. You assumed. And your assumptions would have cost me everything." Nia grabbed her purse. "I'm not standing here listening to this. We spent 2 weeks trying to help you. We put our own lives on hold to manage your affairs. And this is the thanks we get? Accusations and suspicion? I'm not ungrateful for your help. I'm angry that your help was the wrong help because you didn't bother to verify the facts. We did the best we could with the information we had. You had access to the same deed I just found. It was in Raymond's study. In his desk. You were in that room packing his things. Did you look at any of his documents? Or did you just pack and donate and make decisions without actually understanding what you were dealing with? Isaiah sank back onto the couch. I didn't look. I should have, but I didn't. Going through Dad's things was too painful. I just wanted it done. So you rushed. And in rushing, you nearly cost me my home. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I'm so sorry, Mom. You're right. I should have slowed down, should have checked, should have asked you what you wanted instead of assuming I knew what was best. It was the first real apology, the first acknowledgement that this wasn't just a misunderstanding but a failure on his part. Nia sat back down, her anger deflating into something that looked like exhaustion. Sheila, I need to say something. You're right that the $15,000 has been weighing on us. Not because we want it back, but because it represented the last of our emergency savings. If something happens, if Isaiah loses his job or I get sick, we have nothing to fall back on. I understand that financial pressure is real, but that wasn't why we suggested selling the house. We genuinely believed it needed to be sold, that you couldn't afford to keep it, that we were saving you from foreclosure and financial ruin. You were wrong about the legal situation, but you were right about one thing. I can't afford this house on my pension alone. Isaiah looked up. What do you mean? The second mortgage, the $580 monthly payment. My pension is $1,800 a month. After property taxes, insurance, utilities, and that mortgage payment, I have maybe $400 left for food, medication, everything else. It's not sustainable. So you do need to sell? I don't know. That's what I need to figure out. But I need to figure it out for myself. Not have it decided for me. Nia leaned forward. Can we help? Actually help this time? Not take over? I need space. I need time to talk to the lawyer about my options. To understand what Raymond's estate actually contains. To make decisions about my own life. How much space? Isaiah's voice was small. I don't know. A few weeks. Maybe more. Are you saying you don't want to see us? I thought about that carefully. I'm saying I need distance to think clearly. You've been here every day for a month, managing everything, and I let you because I was drowning in grief, but I need to learn to swim again, on my own. We're your family, Nia said. We're supposed to help each other. Help, yes. Take over, no. There's a difference. Isaiah stood, moved toward the door. Nia followed, looking back at me with something that might have been concern or might have been calculation. I couldn't tell anymore. Mom, I really am sorry about all of it. I know you are, and I love you, but love doesn't mean I have to accept decisions made for me without my input. After they left, the house felt different. Not empty anymore. Not full of grief. Just quiet. Mine. I walked through each room again, but this time I wasn't saying goodbye. I was figuring out if I wanted to stay. Over the next 2 weeks, I did something I hadn't done in months. I lived alone. Really alone. No Isaiah stopping by to check on me. No Nia organizing my closets. No well-meaning interference disguised as help. At first, the silence was overwhelming. I'd wake up and forget Raymond was gone. Reach for him in the bed, find empty space, and remember all over again. The grief was a physical thing, heavy in my chest, making it hard to breathe some mornings. But I was learning to carry it. I met with Patricia Morrison 3 more times. She walked me through Raymond's estate in detail. His teacher's pension had stopped with his final payment, that $3,400 deposited 3 days before he died. His 403B retirement account had $47,000 in it. His life insurance through the school district was $25,000. Total estate assets, $72. Total debts, $85,000 in medical bills, $15,000 borrowed from Isaiah, various smaller debts totaling another $8,000. Total, $108,000. The estate was insolvent. Even liquidating everything Raymond had solely owned wouldn't cover what he owed. What happens to the rest? I asked Patricia. The creditors file claims against the estate. The estate pays what it can in order of priority. Medical bills and funeral expenses come first, then secured debts, then unsecured debts like credit cards. When the money runs out, it runs out. The creditors write off the remainder, and they can't come after me? Not for his medical bills, not for debts he incurred. You're protected. But I didn't feel protected. I felt guilty. $36,000 in medical debt would go unpaid because Raymond had died before he could settle it. Doctors and hospitals who'd tried to save his life wouldn't get what they were owed. That's not your fault, Patricia said, reading my expression. That's reality. People die with debt all the time. The system accounts for it. The system accounted for it. But I'd still wake up at 3 a.m. thinking about unpaid bills and broken promises. What about the house? The second mortgage? That's trickier. The second mortgage is secured debt against the house. If you can't make payments, the bank can foreclose. But because the house transferred to you outside of Raymond's estate, his estate isn't responsible for that debt. You are. So, I need to keep making the $580 payment. Or refinance. Or pay it off. Or, yes, ultimately, sell if you can't afford it. I went home and did math. Painful, honest math. My pension, $1,800 monthly. Property taxes, $267 monthly. Insurance, $145. Utilities averaged $180. The second mortgage, $580. Basic maintenance and upkeep, maybe $150 if nothing major broke. Total, $1,322 in housing costs, leaving me $478 for food, medication, gas, everything else. It wasn't impossible, but it was tight. One major repair, one medical emergency, one unexpected expense, and I'd be underwater. Isaiah called on day 12 of our separation. I almost didn't answer, but some part of me still wanted to hear his voice. Mom, how are you? I'm managing. I've been thinking about our conversation, about the house, about everything. And I want to understand something. Do you actually want to keep the house? Or do you feel like you have to keep it because Dad made sure you could? It was a good question. An honest question. One I'd been avoiding answering even to myself. I don't know, I said. Some days I wake up and every room feels like a shrine, like I'm living in a museum of my marriage. Other days, I walk through and hear your father's voice in every corner, and that's a comfort. Have you thought about what you'd do with the $35,000 if you did sell? Patricia says it might be more like $45,000 now that we know the house isn't paying Raymond's estate debts. The medical bills come out of his retirement and life insurance, not from the sale proceeds. Isaiah was quiet. That's enough to buy something smaller. A condo, maybe. Something without the maintenance burden. Or it's enough to renovate this house. Update the kitchen, fix the roof, make it more manageable. Is that what you want to do? I'm still figuring out what I want. That's the point of this space, Isaiah, to figure things out without someone else's agenda influencing me. I wasn't trying to have an agenda. I know, but impact matters more than intent. More silence. Then, Nia wants to apologize. Really apologize. Not the defensive stuff from before. I'm not ready for that yet. I understand. But Mom, I need you to know something. That $15,000 we loaned you and Dad. I meant it when I said it was a gift. I don't want it back. I won't mention it again. If you sell, if you don't sell, it doesn't matter. That money is gone and I'm okay with it being gone. even though Nia isn't? He hesitated. Nia is dealing with her own financial anxiety. Her parents had to declare bankruptcy when she was in college. She's terrified of being in that position. When we borrowed against our retirement, it triggered something in her. That's not my problem to solve. I know. I'm just explaining, not excusing. Isaiah, I appreciate the call, but I need more time. How much time? I don't know. I'll know when I know. After we hung up, I stood in Raymond's study. Our study now, I corrected myself. He wasn't coming back to claim it. I pulled out the deed again, read through it for the 10th time. Raymond Patton and Sheila Patton, joint tenants with right of survivorship. He'd added my name in September when he was starting treatment, when he was still hoping but also preparing. What had he been thinking? That I'd need protection? That Isaiah might make assumptions? That I'd be vulnerable without legal security? Or had it just been love? A final act of partnership, making sure we truly shared everything, even in death. I'd never know, and maybe that was okay. Maybe I didn't need to understand his reasoning to honor what he'd done. But I needed to decide what to do with the gift he'd given me. 3 weeks after our confrontation, I invited Isaiah to lunch. Just him, not Nia. We met at a diner in Hampton, neutral ground, where neither of us had memories with Raymond. He looked thinner than I remembered, tired. Grief wasn't just mine to carry. He'd lost his father, too. And somewhere in my own pain, I'd forgotten that. Thanks for meeting me, I said as we slid into a booth. Thanks for calling. We ordered coffee, made small talk about his work, the weather, anything that wasn't about houses or money or the chasm that had opened between us. Finally, over eggs neither of us was really eating, I said what I'd come to say. I need you to understand something about your father and me. About our marriage. Isaiah set down his fork, listening. When we got married, I was 25, making $8.25 an hour. Raymond was 26, a first-year teacher making $23,000. We were broke. Really broke. For the first 5 years, we lived paycheck to paycheck. I didn't know that, because by the time you were old enough to notice, we'd stabilized. I'd worked my way up at the school, Raymond had tenure and raises, we'd paid off the mortgage your grandmother left. But it wasn't always comfortable. Why are you telling me this? Because I need you to understand that the house being in Raymond's name initially wasn't about power or ownership. It was just practical. It came from his mother. We never thought to change it, because we never thought it mattered. We were a team. Isaiah nodded slowly. But it did matter. After he died, after I found that deed with both our names, I realized something. Your father had understood something I hadn't. That legal ownership matters. That protection matters. That making sure I was secure wasn't just about trust, it was about reality. He was protecting you from what happened with me and Nia, from assumptions about who owned what. Maybe. Or maybe he was just making sure no creditors could touch the house. Or that if something went wrong with probate, I'd be okay. I'll never know his exact reasoning. The waitress refilled our coffee. Isaiah waited until she left before speaking. Mom, I need to tell you something. About why I pushed so hard to sell. You thought it was necessary. Yes, but also. He looked down at his hands. I was angry. At Dad. For dying. For leaving us with all that debt. For the experimental treatment that cost $40,000 and didn't work. For refusing hospice because he wanted to keep fighting, even when the doctors said there was no point. I felt tears stinging my eyes. He was stubborn. He bankrupted himself trying to buy a few more months. And I was angry that he'd done that to you, that he'd left you with this financial mess. So you wanted to fix it. I wanted to make Dad's choices not matter. To clean up the mess and get you settled somewhere affordable so I wouldn't have to be angry at him anymore. Oh, baby. I reached across the table, took his hand, Your father made the choices he needed to make. He fought because fighting was who he was. And yes, it cost everything, but he got to fight. He got to hope. That mattered to him. It left you alone in a house you can't afford. It left me in a house I own. There's a difference. Isaiah wiped his eyes with his napkin. Are you going to keep it? I don't know yet. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Not what's practical or what makes financial sense, but what I actually want. What will help me heal instead of just survive. What does healing look like? I thought about that. I think it looks like making my own choices, even if they're imperfect, even if they're mistakes. Just being the one who decides. And if you decide to sell, is that okay? Or will you think I pressured you? If I sell, it'll be because I chose to. Because I talked to Patricia, looked at all the options, and decided selling was right for me, not because anyone pushed me into it. He nodded, then asked the question I knew was coming. Can I ask you something? About the $15,000? You said it was a gift. It was. It is. But I need to know if you think we loaned it expecting to benefit from Dad's estate. If you think we were waiting for him to die so we could get paid back. I think you loaned money to help your father live, and I think when he died you were left with debt and grief and no way to process either. So you tried to fix something. Anything. Even if it meant making decisions that weren't yours to make. That's generous. It's honest. Isaiah, you're not a villain. You made mistakes because you were hurting. But mistakes have consequences. Trust has been broken. We can't just go back to how things were. What can we go back to? I don't know yet. Maybe something different. Maybe something better. But it'll take time. He nodded, accepting what I couldn't yet give. What about Nia? I'm not ready to talk to Nia. She wants to explain her side. I'm sure she does. But right now, I need to focus on my own decisions. Not manage other people's feelings or hear explanations that might be justifications. That's fair. We finished our coffee, and Isaiah insisted on paying. As we stood to leave, he hugged me. Really hugged me, not the awkward half-embrace we'd been doing since Raymond died. I love you, Mom. I'm sorry I made you feel like I was trying to take Dad's house from you. I love you too, and I'm sorry I accused you of having mercenary motives. The truth is probably more complicated than either of our versions. Isn't it always? I drove home thinking about what Isaiah had said. About being angry at Raymond for fighting so hard it bankrupted them. About wanting to fix the mess so he wouldn't have to be angry at his dead father anymore. Grief made us all irrational. Made us lash out at the people we loved because we couldn't lash out at death itself. A month after that lunch with Isaiah, I was standing in my kitchen when I finally admitted the truth to myself. I couldn't afford to keep the house. Not really. Not sustainably. Not without constant anxiety about the next repair, the next expense, the next thing that would break and drain what little cushion I had. The second mortgage payment was manageable, if nothing else went wrong. But things always went wrong. The furnace was 20 years old and making strange noises. The roof had another 5 years on it, maybe. The water heater was original to the renovation Raymond and I had done in 2003. I could limp along for a while, making payments, praying nothing major failed. Or I could make a different choice. I called Patricia Morrison. I want to explore selling. But on my terms, my timeline. Can you recommend a different realtor? Not Donna Mitchell. I know someone, Teresa Washington. She's patient, honest, won't push you into decisions. Teresa came over the next week. She was older than Donna, maybe 55, with gray locks and a calm demeanor that immediately put me at ease. Tell me what you're thinking, she said. I'm thinking I can't afford to keep this house, but I'm not ready to let it go yet either. That's more honest than most people manage. I need to understand my options. Real numbers, real timeline, real outcomes. not what someone thinks I should do. Okay, so let's start with the house value. The market softened a bit since earlier this year. I'd estimate you could get $175,000 to $180,000, maybe $182,000 if we get the right buyer. Less than Donna had projected. What would I walk away with? Teresa pulled out a calculator, started running numbers. Second mortgage payoff is about $46,000 now. Realtor commission on $180,000 is $10,800. Closing costs, transfer taxes, title fees, maybe another $4,000. That leaves you roughly $119,000. 11,900美元. Significantly more than the $35,000 Isaiah had projected because the medical bills weren't coming out of the sale. But still, just $119,000 to start over at 61 years old. What could I buy with that? In Baltimore, you could put 20% down on something around $90,000 to $100,000. A small condo, a townhouse in a transitional neighborhood. Your mortgage would be maybe $650 a month. More than the second mortgage I'm paying now. Yes, but no separate property tax, no maintenance burden. The condo fee covers exterior upkeep, roof, common areas. You'd have fewer expenses overall. Or I could rent. Use that $119,000 to supplement my pension. You could, at $119,000, if you invested conservatively, you might generate $400 to $500 a month in income. Combined with your $1,800 pension, that's $2,200 to $2,300. You could afford a decent apartment and have breathing room. I walked Teresa through the house, let her take photos, but told her I wasn't ready to list yet. She didn't push, just gave me information and told me to call when I was ready. That night, I sat down with all the numbers, made spreadsheets, calculated different scenarios, keeping the house versus selling, buying something smaller versus renting, using the money to renovate versus investing it for income. Every option had trade-offs. Every choice meant giving up something. If I kept the house, I kept Raymond's memory alive in every room, but I lived with constant financial anxiety and the burden of maintenance I couldn't easily afford. If I sold and bought something smaller, I had a fresh start but a mortgage that might stretch into my 70 seconds. If I sold and rented, I had flexibility and financial breathing room, but no equity, no ownership, no roots. I was still weighing options when Isaiah called 2 weeks later. "Mom, I need to tell you something. Nia and I are separating." The words hit me like cold water. "What?" "We've been in counseling since our fight with you, trying to work through things, but it's not working. We want different things. We've wanted different things for a while." "Isaiah, I'm so sorry." "Don't be. It's not about you. Or it's not just about you." The situation with Dad's house and the money just revealed problems that were already there. "What kind of problems?" He was quiet for a moment. Nia grew up watching her parents struggle financially. Bankruptcy, foreclosure, constant stress about money. She swore she'd never be in that position, but that fear controls everything, every decision, every purchase, every risk. "I can't live like that." And the $15,000 was the breaking point. Not the money itself, but what it represented. I gave it freely because Dad needed help. Nia saw it as throwing away our security. We couldn't get past that fundamental difference. "I didn't mean to cause problems in your marriage." "You didn't cause them. You exposed them. There's a difference." After we hung up, I sat with the weight of it. My son's marriage falling apart, partly because of money I'd accepted for Raymond's treatment, partly because of assumptions about my house, partly because grief and fear had collided in ways none of us had handled well. Everything had costs. Every choice rippled outward in ways you couldn't predict. I thought about Nia, who I still hadn't spoken to since our confrontation. Nia, whose fear of poverty had driven her to try to solve my financial situation whether I wanted it solved or not. Nia, who was now losing her marriage partly because she'd pushed too hard to protect herself from the financial instability she'd grown up with. I didn't forgive her, but I understood her better. The next morning, I called Teresa Washington. "I'm ready to list the house." "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm sure I can't keep living in limbo. I need to move forward, even if I'm not certain where I'm moving to." "When do you want to list?" "After I've had time to pack, after I've said my goodbyes to this place properly. Maybe a month?" "That works. Have you thought about where you'll go?" "I'm looking at condos in Catonsville. Small, manageable, near the library. There's one for $95,000 that might work." It was almost exactly what Isaiah and Nia had suggested months ago, but this time it was my choice, made on my timeline, for my reasons. That was the difference that mattered. I spent the next month sorting through 28 years of accumulated life. Raymond's books, his clothes I'd been avoiding, the wedding photos, the furniture we'd bought together. I kept what mattered, donated what didn't, threw away what was broken. Isaiah helped when I asked him to. Mostly I worked alone, saying goodbye to each room, each memory, each version of myself who'd lived here. The kitchen where I'd made thousands of meals. The living room where Isaiah had taken his first steps. The bedroom where Raymond had died in his sleep, the cancer finally taking him after months of fighting. The house went on the market in late April. We got an offer in 3 weeks, $178,000 from a young couple expecting their first child. They loved the neighborhood, the tree-lined street, the sense of history. I accepted their offer and felt nothing, not relief, not regret, just a strange numbness that might have been acceptance or might have been exhaustion. Closing was set for June 15th. I'd be out by June 10th. I'd already put a deposit on the condo in Catonsville. 1 bedroom, $650 monthly condo fee, $580 mortgage. Manageable. Safe. Not home, but a place to live while I figured out what home meant anymore. I moved out on June 8th, 2 days before I had to. Isaiah hired movers, insisted on paying for them. It was a peace offering, and I accepted it. The condo in Catonsville was clean and empty, and nothing like home. Beige walls, laminate floors, a view of the parking lot through windows that didn't let in enough light. But it was mine. Or it would be, once I finished paying the mortgage in 15 years. If I lived that long. I spent the first week arranging furniture, hanging pictures, trying to make the space feel less temporary, but everything felt wrong. The couch from the house was too big for the living room. Raymond's bookshelf didn't fit against any wall. The kitchen was so small I could barely turn around. I'd made a terrible mistake. That's what I told myself at 3 a.m. when I couldn't sleep, when the silence felt different than the silence in the house, when I realized I'd sold my home for $178,000 and a condo that would never hold Raymond's memory the way the house had. But in the morning, I'd make coffee and sit by the window and feel something else. Not regret exactly, more like grief for a choice that had been necessary but still hurt. The closing on the house happened without me. Patricia handled it through power of attorney. I couldn't bear to be there, to sign papers in a title company office, to watch strangers take ownership of 28 years of my life. The money hit my account 2 days later. After paying off the second mortgage, covering closing costs, and paying realtor fees, I had $117,000. I put $19,000 toward the condo down payment. That left $98,000. Patricia helped me invest most of it conservatively. Bonds, dividend stocks, things that would generate maybe $350 a month in income. Not much, but combined with my pension, it meant I had $2,150 monthly instead of $1,800. Breathing room, space for emergencies. I paid Isaiah back the $15,000 he'd loaned us for Raymond's treatment. He tried to refuse, said it was a gift, said I needed the money more than he did, but I insisted. His marriage had ended partly because of that money. The least I could do was clear that debt. He cashed the check. We didn't talk about it again. Raymond's estate settled in July. The $72,000 in his retirement and life insurance went to creditors. The medical bills took most of it. The remaining $36,000 in debt was written off. Hospitals and doctors and pharmaceutical companies absorbed the loss. The system accounted for it, just like Patricia had said. But I still woke up some nights thinking about those unpaid bills. About the nurses who'd cared for Raymond, the doctors who'd tried everything, all of them working for institutions that would never collect what they were owed. Guilt was expensive. It cost more than money. By August, I'd established a routine in the condo: morning coffee by the window, walks to the library, volunteer work at the elementary school's summer program, serving lunch to kids like I'd done for 33 years. The cafeteria manager there was young, efficient, didn't need my help. But she let me work anyway, understanding that I needed to be useful. Isaiah came by once a week. We had dinner, talked carefully around difficult subjects, rebuilt something that wasn't quite what we'd had before but was maybe more honest. His divorce was proceeding. He'd moved into an apartment in Towson, was seeing a therapist, was trying to understand why he'd pushed so hard to fix things he couldn't fix. "I think I was trying to save you because I couldn't save Dad," he told me one evening. "If I could get you settled, get you safe, solve your problems, then maybe Dad's death would mean something. Would have a purpose. Your father's death didn't need a purpose. It just was. I know that now, but I didn't know it then." We were both learning. Slowly, painfully. I never spoke to Nia again. She called once, a month after the separation, wanting to explain, to apologize, to make me understand her perspective. I listened for 5 minutes, then told her I had to go. Some relationships don't survive truth. Some connections only work when nobody asks hard questions. Nia and I had never been family, I realized. We'd been playing at family while Raymond was alive to bridge the gap between us. With him gone, there was nothing to build on. I sold Raymond's car in September, got $4,000 for it, put it in savings. I didn't need 2 cars, barely needed one, living in the condo near public transportation. But I kept his books, all 200 of them, crammed into the too small bookshelf, overflowing onto stacks on the floor. They made the condo cluttered, impractical. I didn't care. They were Raymond's voice, his mind, his hours of thinking and teaching and loving literature. They were what remained. On what would have been our 37th wedding anniversary, October 12th, I drove back to the old neighborhood, parked across the street from the house, watched the young couple who'd bought it. They'd painted the door red. Raymond would have hated that. I loved it anyway. They had a swing set in the backyard now. I could see it from the street. Their daughter, maybe 2 years old, playing while her mother watched. Building the memories that would define that house for them, the way my memories had defined it for me. The house wasn't mine anymore, but it was still standing, still solid, still home to people who loved it. That had to be enough. I drove back to Catonsville, to my beige condo with the parking lot view, and made dinner in my too small kitchen. The silence didn't feel quite so heavy anymore. The space didn't feel quite so wrong. It wasn't the life I'd planned. Wasn't the future Raymond and I had imagined when we talked about retirement, about growing old together in the house, about watching grandchildren play in the backyard. But it was the life I had, and I was learning to live it. Isaiah called that evening. "Mom, I was thinking about Dad today." "Me too." "Do you regret it? Selling the house?" I thought about that question, really thought about it. I regret that I had to choose. I regret that keeping the house would have meant constant financial stress. I regret that selling it meant giving up the last place where I could still feel your father's presence. That's not an answer. I know. Because I don't have a clean answer. Some days I think I made the right choice. Other days I think I gave up too easily. Most days I just try not to think about it at all. That's honest. It's all I have. We talked for another hour about nothing important. His job, my volunteer work, the weather turning cold, normal things, parent and child things, building something new from the wreckage of what had broken. After we hung up, I sat in my small living room surrounded by Raymond's books and thought about choices, about the ones we make freely and the ones circumstances force on us, about the difference between giving up and letting go. I'd let go of the house, not because I wanted to, but because holding on would have slowly crushed me under the weight of expenses I couldn't manage and memories I couldn't escape. That wasn't defeat, it was survival, and survival, I was learning, was its own kind of victory. That is Sheila Patton's story. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from? What city? What country? Drop it in the comments below. I love seeing our global community come together over these powerful stories about grief, family assumptions, and the impossible choices between keeping your home and keeping the peace. Hit that like button if this story made you feel something. Share it if you know someone dealing with well-meaning family members who take over during grief. Someone whose children made major decisions without understanding the legal reality. Someone who's been pushed to give up their home because others assumed they knew what was best. And subscribe for more raw, real stories about navigating family dynamics after loss, the complexity of joint property ownership, the weight of medical debt, the difference between help and control, and what happens when grief makes everyone strangers to each other, even as they're trying to love each other through impossible situations. See you in the next video.